Hey everybody, how you doing? This is Biomassed podcast. I think we're up to episode like 6 or so, and we've had a pretty busy week, and we've got some really cool guests on tonight for everybody to kind of talk to. And I think we have a good show for you. It'd be probably a little bit shorter than we normally have it, but that's no drama. Tonight we've got Aeon Amadi, and we've got Hans Jagerblitzen, BAMM HAVOC, myself, Pokey Draven, and Srizel, and as ever, legend, wait for it, Derry will be helping run the show for us. But again, tonight, kind of an interesting topic. We've had a lot of news in the CCP world here recently, and some of it, frankly, not too good. So I think everybody, for the most part, that listens to this podcast, or maybe you're catching it for the first time, you're probably tuned in enough to know that there's been a round of layoffs at CCP that's affected quite a bit, and it created some pretty emotional reactions because some of the folks laid off were definitely player community favorites, and for a good reason. Frankly, they were really really good dudes. So that's one thing that we're going to be discussing a little bit, and it's really more along the lines of what does it mean for us going forward, and if there, where will the effect be felt, if anything. And at the end of the day, the things that's going to keep the community going is really going to be the community. And we'll be able to work with folks at CCP no matter who they are, even though some of the best links that we have may have kind of moved on. And that's no drama. It's tough in the short term, but in the long term, we'll be able to work through it. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then the next thing we're going to talk about is we did have Hotfix Alpha come out, which is kind of the long-awaited, or at least much anticipated hotfix slash point update that CCP Rakati and crew that are helping run the dust part of CCP in terms of how they're sort of sustaining and dealing with the game. That was something that he pushed through with a lot of player interaction, a lot of CPM interaction, and I'm very anxious to hear what our guests think about how it's being received and sort of in general what they thought of CCP Rakati's first foray into working with the community on actual content for the game, or at least updates or balancing for the game. And then we'll probably close it off with a little bit of discussion about kind of the CPM going forward in terms of how the elections will probably sort of play out mechanically, and sort of what's the importance of getting out the vote and why people should vote for the CPM. And I think that will pretty much cap us at our time for the night. So without further ado, we're going to get started, and we'll do some introductions, and we'll start with Aeon Amadi. Aeon, you up?
That's a no.
Okay. Bam, we'll go to you.
All right. Hey, BAMM HAVOC. Just a gamer. Yeah. Thanks for having me on the show. And yeah, cool.
All right. Thank you. And let's see, Hans.
Hans Jagerblitzen, or Heinrich Jagerblitzen in Dust, member of Onslaught, and CSM 7 Vice Secretary and current CPM Chairman.
Okay, cool. And Aeon, looks like you're back up.
Sorry about that. Push to talk broke. I'm Aeon Amadi, NPC Corp at Demu Warfighters, CPM candidate.
Awesome. And Derry?
Hey guys, Derry from OSG, Community Director and Tech Support for Biomassed.
Pokey?
CEO of OSG Planetary Operations and Alliance Leader in Covert Interventions, and I am a CPM 1 candidate.
And Srizel.
Hey, I'm Srizel. I am an alliance leader of the Top Men Alliance in Dust 514. I'm also a member of the Bastion, and I am also running for CPM 1.
Awesome. Okay. And I'm Jason Larison. I'm a member of OSG Planetary Operations and a Diplo for the Covert Intervention Alliance. And again, sort of the third bill co-host for the Biomass podcast. So we'll get right into it, and we'll just kind of talk a little bit about it. Here this last week, we've had a fair amount of CCP employees that have been let go from the company. And it took me a while to kind of piece together how this worked out. But long story short, there was the layoffs, and then simultaneously, or near simultaneously, there were a couple of fairly scathing articles that came out in some mainstream press, not necessarily gamer news, but mainstream news media, more like business news, about some of the kind of the hard feelings or the concerns that are happening inside CCP writ large. And that sort of triggered a lot of discussion on both the Eve and the Dust side. And basically what's happened, everybody knows that World of Darkness shut down. And there's been a very steady trimming of those folks out of CCP that have been laid off or fired, what have you. A few had been rehomed into other projects inside CCP. But for the most part, they were let go. And they've been with the company for quite a while. and many of them were holdovers from White Wolf as before they got pulled into CCP. And here, this last week, they cut essentially what was originally sort of billed as the publishing department. And that was sort of the big macro tag that they put on it. And I want to say it was somewhere north of 50, maybe 55, 56 total employees that got let go. But in the midst of that, it was not just the publishing department or different components that were perhaps holdovers from White Wolf. It was a broader scope, and it became more apparent when CCP attorney, I'm not really sure how you say that, a very well-known East Side community manager was let go. And subsequently, we found out that CCP Saberwing, one of the fan favorites here on the Dust side, he'd also been let go. And this was all in an effort to essentially merge a lot of departments or overlap some department activities so that they could cut down some of their numbers or make some efficiencies. Again, it's a tough business decision on how this went down, but that's sort of the guts of what happened. And there's a lot of concern in the Dust side community about essentially what does this mean for interaction with the Dust community and how things are going broadly for CCP and the games and the social platforms. And that's really what these games are. They're social platforms for the community. So with that, I'll kind of open the floor up to the guys. And what I'd like to do is kind of start off with Hans, since you were, I'm not going to say you had forewarning of this, but the bottom line is you have probably a little bit better insight in terms of how this occurred, or at least what is the after effect, specifically in terms of how CCP is going to work with the community now that they've fairly radically changed the community relations department, if you will.
Well, to be honest, I have absolutely no clue how that's going to play out. CPM doesn't really have any more information than the public does in this case. Like I found out about all of this via Twitter when everyone else was tweeting about it. Like that's how I found out that there were layoffs, was because other people were tweeting about it while I was at work. And this is a case where we weren't really notified beforehand. It just got out and started spreading, and then like it wasn't till 24 hours later, like it wasn't till the following day that we even had a meeting scheduled where we could ask CCP questions about it. So in this case, like I'm completely behind the curve. The rest of the CPM is completely behind the curve, and we're just normal people as far as information goes at this point. We did have a meeting. The meeting was, didn't really give us any more information. They just asked us if we had questions, and we, asked a few questions that basically resulted in us being told the exact same information that Falcon posted today, about the fact that he's essentially the Dust community manager on the interim, and that's really about all we walked away from it information wise. So as far as how this is all going to play out, I have no idea. We were told the same thing that you guys were, and that they're going to try to keep an equal standard between how the Dust community is handled and how the EVE community is handled, and with the same commitments were made about involving the CPM in the process, just like the CSM is involved. But beyond that, that's about as much information or insight as I really have. As far as the layoffs go in general, I on some levels, yes, obviously it's tragic that we don't have those employees anymore. I'm sad to see a lot of the people go. I mean, there's more people even beyond just the ones that we know. Like one that particular that I'm really sad to see go is CCP Exagon, who essentially founded the CSM and was a 10-year veteran of the company that was awarded a sword last year, and was not just a support system for us throughout my time on the CSM, but was a personal friend as well, and has really encouraged me in all the work that I've done and all this, and so it hits all of us hard. That said, as far as how this is going to impact the company, it's impossible to tell. They obviously had a business reason for doing this. I think you could actually really well make the case that fewer middlemen and fewer middle managers in some cases really could improve things. We've seen lots of examples where communication happened way too slow, or there were way too many hands in the pot. Things should have been approved that weren't approved because there was somebody in between that wasn't approving them. And if the company has decided that that's actually slowing down progress, and that by thinning out the number of people involved with every project, that stuff can happen on an accelerated pace. Like if that's the intent and that's what happens, then this could be good in the greater scheme of things. It's too early to tell. And so, I have to temper my the tendency, like a lot of us have, to feel like the worst case scenario has just occurred, because there's a lot of circumstances where there should have been faster movement. I mean, if you look at the recent patch that we're working on with CCP Ritati, there's a perfect example of where there's just zero middlemen. It's a developer going straight to the community and working directly with them without anybody in between, and that system works, and it works well, and it has, in my opinion, and that's what we want to see going forward. So, it is what it is, and hopefully, CCP made the right call here, and as painful as it is, hopefully this will lead to something better. But we don't know yet.
Yeah, fair enough.
I just want to know why we can't start, why they can't lay off executive team members, because I think Etern probably contributed more to the game.
Well, that's easy to say anytime this happens at any company, but that without actually being there in the office, being a fly on the wall during those conversations, we don't know exactly why each person was cut or what what the reasons were. It's just, we don't have anywhere enough information to cast that kind of judgment. I think, as satisfying as it is to say, oh, it's the managers that should go.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair statement. And just the one thing that I'll just I've been wanting to chime in on this. I was thinking about it since last night. The one thing that really strikes me is that the reason that we're all we get very invested in this is because, for the most part, the devs that we interact with, they're part of the community too. I mean, that and so when they get stung by a layoff, it affects the community like it would with any community member. So. Like I said, that's just sort of my point of view. I do like the idea that there's effectively not multiple different community managers anymore across all the CCP products. It's sort of consolidated. Now, I'll be frank with you. I don't particularly like the fact that Saberwing got let go, mostly because he was an incredibly good link into the community. But the unfortunate reality is he's also probably one of the newer guys in the community team, and in the business world, a lot of times, the last hired is the first fired, and it's very unfortunate. To be very honest with you, but I think there's probably some business logic to it, perhaps. I don't like it, but I can see from that standpoint there may be something to it.
I think there's a part of it too that I don't know how much I think that the community team being unified or something is necessarily a good idea. I've never felt that the Even Dust communities are particularly anywhere near similar. They're similar in some ways, but very, very different in many others. And I think that there are certain players that there are certain members of the community team that had such a strong relationship with the player base. I think that it's a really, really painful shot. But I do think the Dust community is perhaps, and I don't have the metrics on this, shrinking somewhat. And to some degree, one might wonder if they feel that they don't need as many personnel to manage it. I wonder. As I said, I don't have the numbers.
I've heard no evidence that is the motivation behind this at all.
Okay. The thing for me is I've always felt that we're if anything deprived of enough community team members. I don't think I think Logibro is pretty much the only one who ends up doing forum moderation. I think to some degree it really speaks to a need for the ISD.
CCP Frame is still in Shanghai, and that's been his primary job, has been forum moderation. So that shouldn't really, the state of forum moderation shouldn't really be affected by this, as far as I know.
Hey, Aeon, BAMM, what are you guys' thoughts on this? I know you both very strong opinions. I'm very keen to hear what you guys have on this.
BAMM, you can go first. I'm still consolidating my thoughts.
As am I.
Fair enough.
As far as the forum moderation thing goes, if I'm not mistaken, I might be, Hans would know, the ISD for EVE Online actually has some volunteers for forum moderation. So, do you know anything about that, Hans?
Yes, that's one of their primary jobs. I believe they're called the CC. What is it? Community CPL, something about community liaisons. I always forget it's acronym Stu, but there is a branch that handles forum moderation. That's something we've been, you've talked a lot about trying to get that off the ground, and that's something we should definitely all continue to push for in the future. I think that's one thing that in the wake of these layoffs that we can use as leverage is say, look, if there's less people on board to help, then all the more reason to bring the community into the fold and have them step up to provide some of that support that they're able to. So I think this is just an impetus to get programs like that off and to stop procrastinating, and to do whatever it takes to get those going.
And I voiced that today on the forums. And that is, I just wanted to step in really quick and say that is the CCL, Community Communication Liaisons, are the forum moderators in the ISD.
That's the one. Yep.
Yeah. The thing about it though is like, I've been trying to get this across in Skype and on the forums is that, it sucks what happened, but we really need to actually focus on moving forward from this. And I know it sucks. Saberwing was pretty awesome. We all loved Saberwing, but the thing is, the community morale, at least to me, has been at an all-time low, and dwelling on it isn't going to get much solved. So I'm still focused on actually getting, obviously I'm not trying to repeat myself and saying that we need the ISD, but the whole thing about it is as far as forum moderation and shit, excuse my language, we actually do need that because Logibro and Frame can't do it by themselves. I mean, we there's a few, they're pretty good about, moderating the forums, so there's a few that slip through the cracks. And I don't know, I think that the anything that the community can do at this point would be a morale booster. Anything that the community can get involved in would be a morale booster. And it's just something that we really need.
BAMM, any thoughts?
I have many. But where do I start? Right. As I'm sure everyone here knows, I was told by CCP Saberwing himself this information yesterday, and I did request if I could relay it across to the forum in the community, and he didn't mind at all. And I actually asked him which medium would he prefer me to ask him, as in a post or a video. Again, he didn't mind. This is where Hans disagreed with me and I disagreed with Hans, and the relative shitstorm that sort of followed around it. I didn't think that a post would sort of convey the message I said across, and the video I put out conveying the message was an editorial stuff up at the end. I was meant to put a bit more stuff at the end of it. I kind of not, and stuffed it up and just edited and rendered it as it was. So that video just went out as was. It wasn't meant to sort of end in that dramatic sort of broken headset against the wall thing, which probably didn't help the situation at all. Yeah, the shitstorm that followed with comments from everyone didn't really help Matt as much, because I think I contracted away from the issue at hand, whereas we've lost someone who in the previous comment says, the king is dead and we've lost two princes. I really do hold Etern and CCP Saberwing in the utmost respects. I've known Etern since I first started playing Dust. I've never had a bad word to say about Etern. I've never poked fun at his name. The only dev or CP whatever guy that I've never poked fun at, because he is my favorite. CCP Saberwing had the utmost respect for, because he did have a calming influence on the forums. He said, right, that's shit, right, that's right, carry on, sort of thing. He didn't mince his words. You knew what you were going to get with him. He took you seriously enough to deal with the issue at hand. And the shitstorm that followed from the comments, antagonizing and so on and so forth, didn't really help the situation at all, I thought. And yeah, I'll stop there.
Okay, fair enough.
I will say that Saberwing certainly had a knack for being the absolute most he gave you the answer, no games about it, and I really appreciated that about having him on the team.
Yeah, absolutely. He was very quick to engage anybody from the community. If you you certainly didn't need to be a space game famous guy to get a response from him on the forums or Twitter or whatever. So it is, like I said, it's a tough loss. And and one thing I want to point out, and we very intentionally wanted Hans and BAMM on tonight, and here's the thing, and I'm just going to tell everybody this right now: both of these guys legitimately care more about the community that evolved around this game and the games under the CCP umbrella, probably like as much as anybody. Nobody cares more than either one of them. So any sniping that you see on the forum mostly is pretty much all gone. Those are to a degree emotional reactions, and we're not really going to spend a lot of time on it. But the one thing I just wanted to put out to everybody is, I know BAMM a little bit and I know Hans a little bit, and I can 100% tell you that these are the guys that you want engaging the community on any number of different topics. And they have different things that they're strong at, but the bottom line is that they both care about the community, and most of the emotion you saw over the last probably 24 to 36 hours, it comes from that passion that they both have. So I did want to just put that out there, is that anybody that tuned in to see a cage match tonight, that doesn't happen. That doesn't really happen here, particularly when you have guys that are this committed to the community and trying to find ways to move forward in a positive light. So I did want to give kudos to both of you guys about that.
Well,
thanks
you.
very much.
It.
Yeah, absolutely. No drama with that. The one thing I did know is that CCP Falcon did step in. Hans, you mentioned that, and he was pretty clear on what the direction is that I think he's going for, which is effectively no negative impact to the community in terms of their ability to get their voices heard back to CCP. And I think that's a pretty fair assessment of what he's shooting for. Did you guys get kind of the same vibe from his posts earlier today?
One thing I'll say about that is, it's one thing that Saberwing was really good about was, always being communicative with the community. And I think while they can say that there's not going to be any negative impact on, getting our voices, like the community's voices heard to CCP, they definitely can't really say much along the lines of having that voice recognized. Because, it was one thing to make a thread and then say, hey, CCP, you should do this. But it was completely different to have a developer go in there and say, hey, look, there's something we're working on or something we're not working on, And if they can measure up to that, then, they can really say that there's no negative impact. But at the moment, it's sort of skeptical. At least I am.
No, the way I see it is that if you have direct player-to-dev communication, there's going to be so much shit that's going to be left at the dev's door that they're just not going to be able to deal with it. No community manager, no communication with the devs, which means the CPM, CPM1, god dare I say it, there's no need for it currently, is my opinion. I'm sorry to say that, guys, but null and void, not fit for purpose. And I know I'm saying stuff that's been echoed in many Pyrex video, but it's come true, unfortunately.
Well, I have to
there
argue
is
with you there.
no. Look, there's no need for it at all.
That's patently untrue. That's patently
everyone's running for
There's more
CPM1.
need for it.
There's
There's
twice
more
as much
need-
need. Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so to go back really quick and recap the other question is, I'm sure Falcon is going and his team are going to do their absolute best to do with what they can, and I'm assuming that Falcon himself was not the person who had to decide how many people he had to lose in his team. But the reality is I think that both Etern and Saberwing are two of the better community people that I've ever seen, and losing both of them, there's no way it doesn't hurt community relations, and there's no way that I believe from what I've seen so far that there isn't going to be a loss in that communications. And the thing is the CPM is that other avenue. You have the CCP devs reading the forums, and that's them doing they're going and surfing around to look for things, but it's the CPM that goes the other way and pushes those things to CCP, and with less devs who are actively seeking out that information, it makes it even more important that the CPM are prepared to push that information in CCP's face if they miss it.
So I just want to chime in real quick. I don't want to like defend something without knowing where you stand on it. Why do you like BAM? Why do you feel that there's no need for a CPM anymore?
Well, simple fact of the matter is CCP have stated that it won't affect the development of any of the current games generally. Dust is dead. We all know that. It's on its last legs. Time's up and all that jazz. It's moving up to Legion. The CPM currently, CPM 0, are handing over to CPM 1. The CPM 1 not only have to manage what's left of the dead horse that is Dust 514, but they've now also got to go and have input into a game that's going towards PC, not a PS3. I have a difference of opinion than Soraya, and I do believe there's no need for a CPM or CPM 1. Just go full board, develop for Legion. Once Legion's greenlit, then put a vote up for CPM 1. I'm not saying don't have a CPM 1 ever. I'm saying not yet, not now. Why put the managers of the community just in the middle of the transition between CPM 0 and CPM 1? I mean, is this just it's just me, or is that a bit close to the bone, you know? At the end of the day, it's still the effect.
Their decision.
No, I understand that was never their decision, but this is just like another notch on the, yeah, you know what I mean.
But if you listen to CCP themselves, like they're the ones that are telling everybody exactly why a CPM needs to exist. I mean, even look at Hotfix Alpha and Ratati. He's actively saying, look, these guys are a vital part of the process. They help me with the information that I need. They help me filter through the information and making sure that what we're doing matches broader community sentiment rather than, the cases where there might be only a handful of people posting in a thread. This role of helping them understand the community and the community perspective at every step throughout this process is absolutely vital. And I think the idea of waiting till Legion is greenlit to involve the community in the development is absolutely tragic folly. I mean, that is why Dust is in a state. Let's be honest here. This is why Dust is in a state that it is because for the last couple of years, there hasn't been a strong enough involvement of the community in the development process. And we all know that. We all know the decisions that should have been made differently every step of the way that led to this game being in the condition that it is. And we also have been there every step of the way, handing CCP the answers that they need. And sometimes they take them and sometimes they don't. But I think that all of this to say the community is going to be needed that much more in the future. CCP has been very explicit about the CPM's involvement in that process and why they're crucial. And when the devs are sitting there saying, look, without the community managers, we need the community involved this much more, and we need the CPM specifically to be involved, like, who are we to sit back as outsiders and just cast judgment on that when CCP is being very explicit about the need to have an institution? I think the idea that we're somehow obsolete, it's just been proven just untrue time and time again.
And I think the big point to highlight in terms of the CPM, the need for the CPM before Legion is developed and even fully spec'd out, is the fact that I think there's several elements of Dust where the issue isn't a fix that's easily applied to the game as much as it's a crucial design flaw from the very get-go. And so having player feedback in before those things are final, before they're written into the game, before the rest of the game is designed around them is crucial.
Think of how FanFest could have turned out differently if they had listened to us. I mean, that was the big lesson to learn from all of that, is that CCP had the resources at their disposal. Now, in that particular situation, they chose not to use us in a way that they should have. They chose not to listen to our advice, and things turned out horribly. And I think, once again, it's just another case where, it's very, very clear why there should be a community advisory group deeply involved in the development process, and to be there as a constant resource for CCP to use. The fact that they haven't used us efficiently in the past doesn't in any way change the need for them to use it in the future. And if Falcon and the others are on board with that, and guys like Ratati are saying, I need this to do my job, then who are we to question that?
One thing I just want to kind of make sure I'm backing it up a little bit. Bam, correct me if I'm wrong, but what you were saying, just so I'm clear, is that in the current state of Dust right now, it's not that you don't want a CPM at all. It's literally just, is this period right now, is an efficient use of community time? Is that kind of what you were getting at?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
The way again, my opinions differ wildly compared to the others in here. With no point contact and no communication from the devs to the CPM, having lost that through Saberwing, you guys are going to suffer from the same problems that Hans, Genza, Kane, Iron Wolf Saber, and what's that one? Nova have suffered from. So you guys have got a lot of work ahead of you if you guys are going to keep on top of it. And trust me, it's a lot of work.
But what's the reference material to that claim? How do you get the impression that there's not going to be any communication? There's nobody to communicate to.
There's going to be no communication because there was no communication in the past. As Hans and the other CPMs have said, since they had Saberwing, their communication increased with them and the devs. So, no Saberwing equals no communication, and that's how I see it, unfortunately, mate.
They never said that there wasn't any communication. They said that there was communication. It's just that they didn't listen in some cases, and CCP is not obligated to listen to the CPM at all. The CPM is an advisory council of anything. Well,
just let me kind of sort of throw one last comment on this, and we'll kind of transition on. But and this is actually more for BAMM, and I see exactly where you're coming from on this. I don't know that I agree with you, but I think I see where your point is on it. The only thing I would kind of offer is we all agree that, like, for example, I think we noted that CCP Rattati and his exchanges with the community have been pretty positive. I think we'd all generally agree with that. You might not agree with all the stuff that made it in Hotfix Alpha or whatever, but just the level of contact he's had with us is good. So that's a good example of a dev going straight to the community. But I guess the way I look at it is I still do have questions about where exactly the CPM fits in things when you do have a period of transition, which you're going through with Dust and Legion. But I guess the way I come down on it is I would rather have that group there that's applying some focused effort than not, because at the worst case, even if they come up with really good recommendations, suggestions, and feedback, and it's not listened to, at least it's another avenue of trying to present it back to the CCP team. So that's kind of where I come down on it, and I just kind of like, real quick, BAMM, does that kind of make sense? It's like, would it be better to have them even if they're underutilized?
If they're underutilized, then why have them at all? What I'm trying to say before Aeon tried to sort of what I'm trying to say is, back in the past, Uprising and all that jazz, before Ruse joined, before Saberwing joined, there was no direction in the CCP Shanghai due to other bits and pieces, and Hans has told me himself that there was no constant communication, no setup of meetings, no points of contact in with the dev team in Shanghai, and that's what I'm drawing on. Yes, there was communication, but from what I understand, it was few and far between and very limited, and they were not listened to, and they were not heeded, which is my major concern for the CPM1. Why have them and not have them listened to, or not have them engaged with? There's no point, and that's what I was trying to make. Yeah, but I see you. Thank you. Cheers.
Yeah,
sorry, I'm just really pissed off, man. It's beyond me how pissed I am right now.
Oh, it's all good. It's totally understandable. But, like, the only thing I want to respond to that is just, I would much rather have an underutilized police force than not have one at all. That's just my standpoint.
Waste of time, waste of effort.
Until you actually need them.
Well, and that's fair. And again, one thing I'd like to point out, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Logibro is still doing a lot of the community management stuff. Is that right, Hans?
Well, yeah, and even more specifically, Logibro has always been the direct CPM handler. He's the one that's going to be managing the election. That was always the case beforehand. He's the one that wrote the white paper. And frankly, when it comes to this Hotfix Alpha stuff, he's been an integral member of that team and been the primary person shuttling the information back and forth between the CPM and CCP Rattati. And so, like, we can't sit here and actually make a serious claim that because Saberwing is out of the picture, that suddenly the CPM has no context or has no contact. Like, it's a ridiculous claim, because like Saberwing was the community manager. He wasn't the CPM direct point of contact throughout the last year. That was always CCP Logibro. And so the CPM has not lost its link to CCP in any way. And I think this is just something that's factually true that has to be out there. Like, the community needs to know this, because I mean, first of all, to give Logi Bro some credit. I mean, the guy's put an immense amount of work, and he's been the one that's been our advocate every step of the process, getting this off the ground. And that's not in any way to diminish Saberwing's work either. But in terms of the CPM's direct support, the equivalent of say CCP Dolan or CCP Lilu or CCP Exagon on the CSM side, it's always been CCP Logi Bro. And so that link is still intact, that relationship is still intact, and I have absolutely no reason to believe that it's not going to be just as strong with CPM 1 as it has been with CPM 0. So have things been perfect the last year? Of course not. Have we been underutilized? Absolutely. But that was also before they made a lot of these management transitions that brought people in and that brought guys like Rattati on board specifically to change all that. And so when CCP is making a clear effort to reach out and correct the mistakes of the past, and when we have the resources and points of contacts in place to continue our work, it's silly to say that because we made a mistake in the past that things can't improve. They have to improve, and they will. And the right people are in place to do that now. Even without Saberwing, we still have the right people in place. And CPM 1 will continue, and that relationship will only grow.
Okay. And again, guys, this, my impression, kind of standing back from all this, is that at the end of the day, strong opinions on this really come down to the investment that people have made into the community and the game. And that's one thing I want to kind of leave with the audience on this one. And we'll kind of start to transition on to a couple other topics. And at the end of the day, whether you think that the CPM is necessary or not, whether you think that CCP is making good decisions or not, or whether the game is X, Y, or Z, most of us are here because of guys like those in the podcast. We were brought here into this game. Somebody recommended it to us. We met some guys in the game, or we met some folks in the game that made us want to stay, despite whatever was going on. And then we effectively, generated fairly organically the community that you have now in Dust, and eventually probably in Legion. So even though there's disagreements, I value the opinions of everybody in the podcast and pretty much everybody on, in the Dust community, because everybody has an opinion and it's their perspective. I may not agree with it, but that's okay too. So with that, we'll kind of transition on, and you guys kind of brought up CCP Rattati several times. And I really did want to get everybody's kind of thoughts on how the process went with the way Rattati engaged us, and what you guys think about how Hotfix Alpha has been received, or at least is it value added based on how he went about the process to figure out what he wanted to change, and just your general thoughts on it now that it's been plugged into the system. I'll kind of open the floor up to you guys. What do you think?
I'll make one really quick statement. That is that some of the stuff with Hotfix Alpha isn't quite complete either. Like, I still think we're waiting on the PC changes to get uploaded. And I think with the cloaks, there was a very slight delay added, something to do with when the animation was occurring, the decloaks, so that it's easier to see people as they're decloaking. But that hasn't really changed the firing delay or anything that people have actually been asking for. And so there's still some sort of like loose ends where the patch is concerned, and I think that should be known, but I'll then give it to everybody else to actually comment on what you guys thought of it.
We're talking about Hotfix Alpha, right?
Yeah,
Yep,
yeah, Hotfix
absolutely.
Alpha.
I'm pretty fond of what I've seen so far. I've heard there are blaster tank drivers complaining they can only kill one person at a time, which in my book means that the patch is working as intended.
Yeah, on the opposite spectrum with the tanks, though, like, I tried running with the PLC and took some of my AV fits off the shelf and tried to run with those, but I gotta say, like, even with the damage boost, the PLC is still not really up to par, and I'm looking forward to some of the other changes they've had. And the reason I say that is mostly because, like, AV is in such an odd place right now, man. It really is. Like, you can run commando and get the damage bonus off the light weaponry, and then have like the other light weapon to kind of keep you in check if infantry comes up. Or then you can have the assault, which is a little bit more mobile, less defensive, and have the access to AV grenades. So it's either, you're sacrificing the damage bonus or you're sacrificing the additional grenades. And it's just this huge, like, I don't know, like the AV situation right now. I'm really looking forward to seeing how they want to iron that out.
Yeah, AV is it's still crazy. I mean, I've been playing mostly with heavy suits for AV. I've been, since my beleaguered swarm launchers have been pretty much permanently shelved until we hear more on those, which I guess they said they're still collecting more data or looking to balance the other AV first before they figure out how to fix swarms. But I've been using forge guns mostly, and forge guns are in a decent place. They're not great, but they're probably the best AV we have right now. And the plasma cannon, I heard good things. I tried it. On the rare occasion that you hit something with it, yeah, it is nice now to take a tank shields out in one hit from a light weapon. But good luck getting that one hit, and that thing runs out of ammo really fast.
Well, that wasn't the problem I had. I had problems with armor tanks. Like, it's really not. It's meant for shields, yes, but the amount of repair that you can get on a Madrigar is just insane. Like, it really is a group effort to try to take those things down.
Yeah, I have a continual peeve with the fact that I see drop ships repair from nearly dead to full in like 3 or 4 seconds, and you see the same with tanks in some cases.
Okay, fair enough. Hey, Bam, you're the heavy extraordinaire on the channel. What are your thoughts, man? You're the master forge gunner.
Master Forge Gunner, I don't think about. No. There are many other Forge Gunners out there that do a much better job than I do. I rooftop Forge Gun because I'm that kind of pussy. There are many people who run on the ground with Forge Guns. Them boys have got kahunas the size of coconuts, whereas I've got little raisin ones because I don't like getting mixed up with tanks and then having to turn around and then face 400 infantry and their Deval rifles, only to end up a smudge on the pavement and having to deal with the tank. So I tend to stay on my little perch and fire the first thing that comes across. I will say the assault forge gun is most likely the best forge gun because of the rate of fire and the damage output. You can run the Caldari Heavy with damage mods and 1 armor repair and be a force to reckon with on the ground. But I'm running a lot of the Amar suit still when it comes to the Sentinel stuff, and that is my go-to fit. I quite like my Amar Sentinel. I've got the Galente, I've got the Mimitar, I've got the Caldari, but I don't know, I just keep going back to my Amar, even though after the changes of 1.8, it's still a good viable suit that does what I want it to do. And when you put a HMG in my hands, people die. Yes,
Huge
that was
fan.
full of ego.
It's all right, man. That's absolutely all right. Just my broad thoughts on Hotfix Alpha. I did really like the engagement that they had with the community. I'm not a scout. I don't play scouts or anything like that, but I watched some of the conversations between folks like Zatara and Appia and Shadi and a few other people floating in and out, that they got into an incredibly technical discussion on the scouts with Ratati, and that was a pretty interesting thing. I'm kind of curious to hear from the scouts, what they think of Hotfix Alpha, because I know that I think it probably touched them more than it touched anybody else. I think, and I am patiently kind of waiting to see what's going to happen in Hotfix Bravo. I've seen a lot of different discussions about suit balance and things like that. How do you make medium suits a little bit more viable and that kind of jazz? There was also a hint from CCP Ratati about AV, like potentially giving commando suits some kind of AV bonus. I don't know if there's just him thinking out loud on the forums or whatnot, but broadly, I think Hotfix Alpha was pretty good. I'm kind of digging it. Anything that swings a Nerf bat at a combat rifle, I'm a huge fan of. But for Hotfix Bravo, I think that's what we're calling it, right?
We're going with Bravo, yeah.
It's probably, yeah. It threw me off. I thought they were going to go with beta, but well. But what do you guys want to see in Hotfix Bravo? Like, what's the
Iskin Fac War?
2 or 3 things. Iskin Fac War. Oh, I mean,
Iskin Fac War. I'm gonna hop up and down on that topic until it happens.
Yeah, fair enough.
I don't think it's as much adding ISK to Fastware as it is removing the sink from the store and forcing people to spend money into it. I'm fine with LP being the resource if the LP stores were fleshed out with the items that everybody needed. And so, there's a dozen different ways to hack this. Adding ISK is certainly another layer you could do into that, but it may even not be necessary if there was actually fleshed out LP stores and there wasn't an ISK penalty to the point where you actually could completely replace your losses from what you're gaining in the LP store. If that were the kind of environment we were talking about, it would be much more sustainable than the current situation.
Yeah, good luck with that though, because like the LP costs are kind of ridiculous. Having an ISK cost on top of that is kind of ridiculous. I mean, the whole system was developed with having a player market in mind, and because there is not going to be a player market, it's kind of falling short on its intended purpose. And I think we really need to like completely reevaluate that entire LP store situation in more ways than one.
Yeah, as a sustainable property, it's so far from there. It's not even funny. I'm trying to think how many matches I would have to do to replace one suit with LP, if I could get all the stuff. And the thing is I mean, it's such a great opportunity if we can if FAQ is more appealing, financially from a gain standpoint, to run than pubs. Then it would take a lot of players out of pubs that really shouldn't be in pubs. They could farm in FAQ War instead, and that would probably smooth out some of the matchmaking issues, smooth out some of the pub stomping. But you do have to actually make it the better choice of how to spend your time if you want people to do that.
Yeah, I mean, like they recently announced. I'm not sure if it actually has gone in yet, but they recently announced that they're going to be removing the ISK generation from clone sales from PC, which I'm kind of like on the fence about that. I think they need to reevaluate PC entirely and come up with a new system as to how to get incentive for people to actually want to do PC without having. I mean, obviously there was a lot of incentive beforehand. It's probably too much, but now I don't think that there's enough because you have to spend a couple of million to get a clone pack, break in, and then get wiped out by the guys who are already there. But the thing about it is that with that in mind, I don't think pub matches are enough as far as the ISK, because you don't make any ISK in faction warfare. So pub matches are literally the only place that you can get ISK unless you're borrowing from somebody else. That being said, how do you afford a clone? How does a corporation afford a clone pack without being really good at the game and not having a lot of losses or just running BPO gear? So I don't know. I think it's just
taxes are delicious for clone packs. But I mean,
sure, but
now,
I mean, you're still
if you're winning in PC, you can make some money on it. But in the new system, but just as a counterpoint, I'm a huge fan of the fact that they're getting rid of the ISK from PC. As you said, PC needs to be looked at holistically from a completely redesign it factor. And the reality is at least right now, we're not going to see that in Dust. It's not happening. And the other thing
it's definitely a Legion thing.
And the other thing we're not going to see right now is we're not going to see the court battle system come back. But what they've done is, or what they will be doing, since they haven't gotten it out yet, by taking the ISK out of PC, they remove a ISK faucet that was horribly unbalancing not just PC, but FAQ War and pubs as well, just by the absolute disjointed distribution of wealth. And so not only do they stop that so that at least the broken system isn't making other things even more broken, but they're also enabling an environment. The incentive is there. You have to look at it differently, though. The incentive isn't ISK. The incentive is court battles. It is court battles if you use it that way. There's no reason to kick someone off of their district and take their district. Your best choice in the new system is to attack and fight, but not kick them off. The only reason you'd want to kick someone off is if you actually have serious beef with them. So you're essentially farming your opponents over and over would be the probably biggest way to make ISK on there.
You know what that sounds like? Seriously,
that sounds like boosting.
No. You know what that sounds like? Like no shit. That sounds like how they work in wormholes at Eve. Like they're to evict somebody out of a wormhole it's not useful because they're much more about the fight, like the PvP fight, than they are about things like SOV. So what you see in Eve on the wormhole side is they'll literally go in there and just literally just keep stepping into the ring with a guy, and they'll get just to the point before they evict him, and they'll pull back, let him build back up, and they'll go back in there just for the fights. That's exactly what it sounds like you're describing.
The thing is that, you know, since they've removed the district, or they're removing the district income from you know, each district that you own, having a ton of districts is no longer an advantage. Or not much of one, because it's a liability. The more that you own, the more you have to defend. So your best option is to let as many parties as possible play in PC, so you have as many forces to attack potentially, and, you know, take ISK by you know, beating them. And I think that's an advantage in a system. I mean, I would love to have a conquest system where territory was meaningful and still an enterable system, but we don't have that system, and we're not getting that system. So the next best thing is turning PC into the closest we can get to court battles.
Okay, fair enough. Let's see. Aeon, BAMM. If you had to pick like two things apiece that you would really like them to fix, that you think could impact, you know, gameplay in Dust for Hotfix Bravo, what do you think you'd want?
Shield module evaluation is reevaluation is one that I've been working on with the guys in Skype, and, you know, like, there's been a lot of, well, I wouldn't say a lot, there's been a couple of forum threads about it that I really like. I mean, the suggestion to have like very powerful shield regulators is awesome to me, and the reason I say that is because shields, I know a lot of people say, like, oh, well, you just can't get as much HP as armor. Well, you're not supposed to. The whole thing about shields is that it's about less downtime and hit and run style play, whereas armor is for the, you know, is in it to win it. So I think reevaluating shield regulators is a good start, and then we can work on the other stuff afterward. But I'm sorry, I went off on a tangent. So shield module reevaluation, and the second thing is the I'm really looking forward to seeing some AV reevaluation. I'm not sure how much they're actually going to do that, but, you know, it's just one of those things.
No, that's pretty fair. BAMM, what do you think, man?
Well, if Hotfix Bravo came out and they made Ambush a team deathmatch instead of a tank deathmatch, I would be forever grateful. Basically, my opinions vary wildly from people here. Remove tanks from Ambush and vehicles from Ambush completely. Just get rid of them. They're ruining what Ambush should have been, which is team deathmatch. As well as creating subcategories of the same match as Ambush, Skirmish, and Domination, where you meta-lock those certain levels, so you don't get the proto-stomping yeehaw cowboys that have been farming a skin Faction War, Planetary Conquest, come up and absolutely riddle the new player experience, as everyone keeps banging on about the forums, full of holes, because obviously the militia gear cannot stand up to a proto suit. So yeah, that would be most welcome.
I can't agree on meta level locking. I think I don't think it tackles the issue. I think that the issue that is truly important, because you can do just as badly in a proto suit as a militia suit. You could do just as great in a militia suit as a proto suit. The biggest thing that it comes down to is squads versus solo players, and horrible matchmaking in some cases with regards to that. I think that if you wanted to find a change to Ambush that would make it compelling and available to new players, I definitely could see the removal of vehicles. If it not because I vehicle users deserve to be kicked, but because there's such an inherent inability to balance vehicles and infantry with the game mechanics that we have.
It's called a forge gun to the face.
But well, give my forge gun 10 times the damage.
All tankers run away from the forge gun.
But I think that what I think the biggest thing is I think that Ambush has no reason to allow squads. I think if you made that a solo only mode, you would see a lot more balance in it. I think you would see a lot less farming in it, and I think it would be a safer place for people to go try out new fits without getting dominated by organized play.
Again, dude, opinions vary.
Well, I think that's actually, I think both of you are kind of striking on something. It's literally, how do you make, everybody's like focused on the ambush, and that is really the one thing where you're either stomped or getting stomped, and it's really a binary equation at that point. I'm not a big fan of like limiting players, but the one thing I would say is that ambush is the one place where I do actually, by the way, quite like the option of the no vehicle ambush. I kind of dig that. I see where Sarai is coming from in terms of the team, like teamwork is OP jazz. That's probably the one thing I would never want to nerf is actually getting people on comms with each other. The flip side is that you're right. 6 guys in a squad can dominate an ambush just like a tank can. Now, the one thing I will disagree with Sarai on a little bit is the meta level piece. I think this is what CCPZ has been kind of trying to drive at a little bit in turn, or at least they've been talking about in the Legion part of the forums is matchmaking where meta levels are in play. Conceptually, I really like that idea. Like straight up, I think BAM's got it. The problem that I'm not sure about is like, what is it seems like you'd have to get to like a critical mass of player base where it will make the matchmaking work. And that's the only thing I don't know about. But I think you guys are both approaching the same problem in terms of ambush. So that's pretty straight. Hans, what do you think, man? If just straight up player view, what would you want in Hotfix Bravo?
Shields, definitely one of them. I'd love to tackle this faction warfare thing if possible. Already we've started to discuss looking at weapon DPS and weapon ranges and smoothing out some of that. So I expect to see some of that if that discussion goes well. Yeah, I think everyone else has pretty much covered the pressing stuff.
Which
Cool.
one thing I wanted to chime back to about the no vehicle ambush thing. There's no reason that we can't have meta locked sort of game modes like that, but I think they need to be balanced as far as payout if we are going to do that. Because if you're making more ISK, or even the same amount of ISK and an infantry only as you are an ambush match with vehicles, I think it's a little flawed because more people are going to naturally align with the infantry play because there's less risk involved, I think. So, if it's well balanced as far as like risk to reward ratio, then sure. But but this another thing I want to add is I think it's a good idea, kind of, but right now it's not because we only have like 3,500 players on at any given time. And I don't think segregating them even further would just. I think it's a bad idea. Chirp.
I think Jason
Meow?
appeared. Jason's usually the one who pushes this along.
Yeah.
Oh, come on, you're killing me, dude.
I'm blaming you. I'm just gonna lay it all on you.
Okay, that's new. like we've never had that happen before. What you guys miss, like in the listening audience, is that there's about like 5 different Skype channels and text channels going on. It can get pretty sporty in those, so it gets interesting. And yes, I actually do get blamed for quite a bit on the show.
Yeah.
Just for the record.
Godin does not want people to kick him out of ambush, and thinks that after blaster tanks got nerfed, people should stop trying to remove him from ambush.
It's the only way he can get kills. Because he knows I can't get him with my forge gun.
Oh boy!
There you go.
There we go.
No, I think that there's something very valid to that we need to really look at the ambush thing a second time now that we've changed some of that. That's always been my sentiment about it, is that the power level between anti-infantry tanks and just especially that power level combined with map size has a lot to do with these things, and ambush is a smaller engagement zone, and there's just like certain mechanics in games that they get out of balance when you don't have a proper relationship of power to scale. And now that power ratio has been reduced quite a bit, or at least it's been reduced enough that it deserves a second chance. That certainly tempered my own feelings, because I was one of those people that was very against having vehicles at all in ambush, but maybe that's not the case anymore. I think it's worth reevaluating.
Yeah, I think that, as I said before, I think the more important thing is to talk about the squads being the full proto team death squads being allowed in ambush. I think that actually has a bigger play in ambush than even tanks being, say, allowed I mean, when you see tank farming in ambush, that's usually a squad, and you have less of them now because there is a tank limit now in there. But you still saw, I mean, if you have a single tank that comes into ambush, there is still a pretty darn good chance that it's going to get blown up. But if you have a squad of people supporting it, then it's a very different story.
That's fair.
So the tank dies once and I've got to die 30 times. No. No.
I trust me, I feel your pain, but I think that the larger issue is still squads versus solo players, and I think that a solo only mode would give a lot of people more of an ability to go play by themselves. As much as it is a team game, as people keep reminding me when I say this, there are a lot of players who play this game solo, and not supporting them is a good way to not get their money.
Does anybody remember back in closed beta when tanks were like 250,000 ISK each?
And Tank Missile Crisis, yeah. That was fun. And Solid Snake, that beast.
I'm really on the. That's one of the things I'm actually really on the fence about. Is I want players to have accessibility and be able to do the things that they want to in the game, but at the same time, I think a really powerful option should be kind of expensive. So like I've never been able to quite decide whether I'm for having vehicles the same price when they are as powerful as they are, or having them be as powerful as they are for more at the expense of being more expensive and having less accessibility. So it's like one of those things that I've been trying to figure out where I stand, is whether I'm with the players on their accessibility to play what they want to play, or
balancing by cost is always a dicey maneuver, anyways, because there's always going to be an imbalance of resources at some point in the game. Somebody somewhere, money is not going to be an issue for, and you always have to sort of design the game with that in mind of what happens when you get in a scenario where a certain group or a certain individual has unlimited or relatively unlimited resources. Does the game balance, and is it still playable at that level? And I think that's the challenge of trying to use price to mitigate some of this. I think it makes much more. I think that what's critical in the end is that people that want to do something like drive a tank or fly an assault dropship or fly a regular dropship or whatever they want to do, those options should be there under most circumstances. I mean, I think if they're like you said, Aeon, if we had more people playing and we had a larger group and we could parse this up into like more granularity between the matches, then yes, you could certainly put in a mode where something like tanks wasn't an option, and that would be fine for players that wanted to play that kind of a game. But there still needs to be an option for people that run tanks or run dropships to play the game and to play that play style. I mean, that's what people invest their skill points in when they go down a tree. And like a tank and a dropship shouldn't be something, in my opinion, that's so bloody expensive that the people that invest all those skill points don't get to use it unless it's a special enough match where their corp ponies up for that expensive piece of equipment. Like, that's what we don't want to design ourselves into, that corner. And this is certainly going to be an issue as PC goes forward and everybody in PC gets poorer and poorer and poorer. I mean, let's be realistic here. This change in PC is going to bleed a lot of corps down either dry, or it's going to bleed them down to where money management and balancing what kind of quality of gear your corp can afford to bring to a match and still win is going to be an issue. And it's going to be really interesting. One of the criticisms I heard a lot is people complain about, well, I can't afford Pro now, or how can we afford? Do you know how much our losses cost? And it's like, well, yes, I know exactly how much the losses cost, but that could be a good thing. If people bleed down enough to the point where you can't afford to run Proto in every single PC match you fight, and people have to actually pick and choose when they bust out their top tier gear or when they try to get by and win fights with medium gear, this is super, super healthy, in my opinion, if it brings some of that diversity back into things. But however we look at it, whatever balance it ends up at, I think the important thing is you have to keep in mind what happens when somebody still has bottomless ISK, because that is going to be a factor for the foreseeable future. This is not going to take away people's riches overnight. There are going to be corps that for months and months and months are going to continue to run nothing but proto gear regardless.
Nyan San, I think the figure 400 billion was floated. So yeah, I think for the permanent extent of the rest of Dust, we can assume that at least one party in the game, ISK will be no object. I think what it comes down to for me, and I've discussed this before, is again, vehicles don't work in the current way that the game is designed. It's a critical flaw from the ground up in how they were designed to work with the game, and I don't see it being fixed in Dust. I see everything in Dust is going to be a stopgap to try and adjust it as much as we can. But the issue is that they're the fact that you have a vehicle limit per match, if you think about it, that if you're not the first 6 vehicles called in, you're not the first 2 vehicles called in a match, you may be a dedicated tanker who can't call on a tank. Or the very nature that a certain class in the game has a cap on how many you can bring in. There's nothing that says you can't run a match of 16 snipers or 16 scouts, but there is a limit that you can only run 6 vehicles. And that is an inherent admission that vehicles are broken in the design and overpowered from what they should be. And I think there should be the only thing that should prevent you from calling in 16 tanks in a match should be the fact that it should be entirely impossible to do anything intelligent with 16 tanks in a match. What classes and what balance of classes you use in a team needs to be built into how they play. And the fact that tanks are faster, do more damage, take more damage, and are basically in almost every way superior to a drop suit is an inherent flaw. They should have other things to do other than killing infantry, because they shouldn't be good at killing infantry. They should have their own distinct purpose in the game, and that doesn't just mean countering other tanks.
Yeah, I'm glad that you said that last part, because I was about to confront you on that. It's be like, because if we put in vehicles in the game under the pretense that they're not for infantry, then the only thing they're for is for other vehicles and installations, because they can't capture points.
They have to have a purpose.
Yeah, they have to have a purpose, but it can't be fucking arbitrary. Excuse my language again. Sorry, it's just a biker. But anyway, the harkening back to the whole thing about like removing passive ISK from PC, one of the concerns that was brought to me from one of the guys in the community was, like, what about ISK transfer to Legion? And at first I was like, yeah, it's kind of tough to answer. But now that I'm starting to see the value in having passive ISK removed, because provided that we're given enough time between Legion, Dust 514 and Legion's release, you have a grand opportunity to sort of mitigate how much ISK actually gets transported over to Legion. So I think it's another factor to consider into that, and I think it's going to impact vehicles immensely to the extent that it has, because vehicles are to some degree or another more expensive than some infantry. Some, not all. I know there's a lot of proto AV fits out there that like well exceed the cost of a tank.
Yep, this kid here.
So, but I mean, like, that's one of the things that I've been pushing for is maybe, like, I'm really hoping that they can do something with it in Dust 514 as far as like just changing stats out, but giving vehicles a dedicated role, I think, is what CCP has faltered on. Because, like, I mean, you think of a Madrigar and then you think of a Gun Logi, right? And you kind of have to like think about, well, what is the difference between the two? What do they do differently other than, shield and armor? Like, I mean, vehicles, maybe not to the extent of like LAVs, but vehicles in themselves have always been about two things: transportation and slaying. And I think it's really flawed to have an entire balance discussion about vehicles being slayers when the entire game is about slaying, and they're immune to like 90% of, well, maybe not 90%, maybe like 75% of the small arms in the game. So it's sort of a flawed argument to say that, oh, well, they're just better slayers. I think they need to have a dedicated role, and I think that's why CCP has sort of like floundered so much in trying to get them balanced properly, is because without having a dedicated role for these things, what are they other than just better infantry?
I fully agree, and I think in terms of Legion, that needs to be one of their highest design priorities. I think that installations and structures need to be an actual active part of the game modes, and there needs to be a reason to have heavy artillery in the game as a serious, critical, crucial part of winning the game mode, not just a side task. Tankers should be incredibly crucial to an organized play, but that doesn't mean they should be infantry farmers. They need to be a part of progressing through the mode.
Well, part of the thing about the installations, and I think if it's even possible at this point, I'm not sure if it's like a coding change or whatnot, but if installations didn't just disappear after they got destroyed, that'd be a great thing, in my opinion, especially if we get the Axis repair tool fixed up to where it could actually be utilized. And the reason I say that is because installations at the moment are, to some degree,
Warpoint
fundamentally
candy for
better
tankers.
than... Well, no, that's not what I was talking about. To some degree or another, they are fundamentally better than the turrets that are used on tanks. They don't have a magazine limitation, and from what I was told the other day, the blaster installations don't have the dispersion like the tanks do. So technically, if you remove the aspect that they are warpoint candy and they can be destroyed permanently, installations can be a very valid tactic to use against very powerful vehicles because they are better than the turrets that are on those vehicles.
That's fair enough.
Well, since we're on the subject of balancing tanks, why don't we go back to balancing the amount of vehicles that called in, as Sir XL said. I don't know if any of you remember, but way back when in 2009, you actually had to earn a set amount of war points before you could actually call and utilize your arsenal and plethora of vehicles. A similar sort of point scheme that you use. Warbard strikes on 2,500, I think it is. Perhaps maybe you could limit the amount of your 6 tanks being called in at the very start of the match and actually having to get the player out the red line to actually engage the match to earn the war points to call his tank in. Would that help perhaps balance it even further? Believe it or not, CCP have come up with all the ideas that I think we're all expressing now. They're not stupid, they're not idiots, although they make colossal cock-ups, but they have got ideas in place. I think it's a fact that we just aren't remembering these ideas.
Actually, that I didn't know that. I started playing right after it came out of beta when it first opened up for the PlayStation. I didn't know that they had that. That's in a
You
weird way,
had moving
kind of
MCCs as well, actually. So you have player-controlled moving MCC, but that was back when it was actually on the Carbon engine running on PC. So, we're obviously coming across to PlayStation. A few factors had to be lost, but I don't see why you can't call in a tank, say, after you've earned like 200 war points. It's not difficult to earn 200 war points. You have to engage into the game. You've killed 4 turrets, 2 turrets even, whatever, and you've got your war points. Done. Call your tank in. There we go.
Yeah, if you think about it, that's a mechanic that's pretty common in a lot of first-person shooter games, that you have to, do a certain amount of things or achieve a certain amount of X, and then you get access to like a UAV, or you get access to X, Y, and Z. That's
power escalation.
That's not a bad way to go. And if you think about it, if you told me that I had to earn 2,000 more points in my squad to call a tank in, that's more valuable than a single orbital usually. That's pretty legit.
2,000 more points is a bit far, I think. But
yeah, no,
that's an idea. Yeah.
Conceptually, if you told me I could pick between dropping a strike or or a tank coming in, the tank's going to win every time because it's got a much more longer term use. Now the flip side is what the guys were talking about earlier, is like if you are a dedicated vehicle dude, how do you make the war point buffer low enough so that they can get the most out of their SP investment. I think that's kind of a novel approach. I didn't even know that was in the game.
It's an interesting approach. The thing I would say that if that was something that was implemented into the game in its current state, that you remove that restriction from areas like PC, because if a corporation's spending the money on the vehicle, just let them use the damn vehicle. I mean, I don't think it's like, I think it's an artificial sort of limitation that won't really.
Oh no, I'm not saying it's a be all end all. It's just a suggestion, an idea. I mean, this could be perhaps maybe what CCP are getting at when they say streamlining for Legion. Instead of you having to spend SP, should I say, on skilling into the tank, you've obviously streamlined yourself. You get to call in either a dropship, a tank, or a strike, and there's your streamline. Perhaps maybe that's what they got in the their arsenal of ideas. I don't know. I'm just throwing ideas out there. That's all.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, it's an interesting concept, but like my primary concern is whether or not the players have the accessibility that they need. Because if a guy spends a bunch of SP into a tank, he should be able to use a tank instead of running around in a starter fit. So.
No, I agree. If you spent the SP, it's your tank. You can call it as and when you want. It's just an idea. Maybe they could put forward into Legion. I don't know. Just an idea that they came up with originally as well. Not me. It's their idea.
You actually bring up a good point though, Bam. Is like I'm sitting here thinking through this. So like all the different things that guys said they used to have versus what they have now. Yeah, I think you're right. There's like no lack of good ideas. There's probably a few bad ones out there that I'm sure we don't want to see the light of the day. But it's pretty cool actually that we're kind of coming full circle on this. Maybe they're learning some lessons for Legion. Who knows?
Yeah, no friendly fire on dumb fire swarms. God, that was terrible.
So
that was funny.
Sounds like a good troll though. Hey, real quick, I think Hans has to jet. Hans, you want to do a quick shout out?
A shout out to CCP Falcon for getting that awesome post up right away. I know this hasn't been easy for anybody involved at CCP to talk about any of this, and I know it's even harder to sit down and like do actual work. When you just kind of want to sit and process all of what's going on emotionally, and I really appreciate him jumping on that and getting some hard facts out there about to make sure the community knows that we absolutely have a point of contact. The CPM is very, very important to CCP, and that working relationship to preserve the community's involvement in the development process is going to continue no matter what happens in all this. So I really appreciate it, and thanks to everyone else for being patient and just hanging in there. Like that's what it just means a lot to me that there's still a lot of people around that aren't discouraged by any of this, that are seeing through the bad to the future that we got ahead. And I couldn't do this without you guys. So thanks to everyone, and thanks for having me again tonight. I appreciate it.
Yep, absolutely no problem, Hans.
All right, take care, guys.
Okay.
Cheers.
I guess we are about at the 120 hour mark, so we'll probably go ahead and start wrapping this up, guys. So what I'd like to do real quick is I'll kind of go top to bottom again. We'll start with Aeon and BAMM and down to Soraya, and just sort of your closing thoughts, or if there's
Last again.
There's like that the one. Well, you're at the bottom of the list, killer. If you just had like your one idea, or your kind of the one thing you wanna lay out for the community, just this is your opportunity, and just kind of keep it kind of short, and we'll move right through it. And any shout outs, so shout outs to any of your mates, anybody in your corp, or whoever you want, and for whatever reason. So with that, we'll start with Aeon Amadi.
Yeah, this is mostly addressed to the community. Like, if you guys have anything that you want to bring up as a potential thing to implement into Hotfix Bravo, definitely bring it to one of the candidates. Like, seriously, because we have a lot of access to like Skype discussions that you're totally invited to. Don't think this is like just some private thing. I know that's a rumor that's been going around lately. You're totally invited to come and chill with us and just talk shop. So yeah, that's all I really had to say. Is just if you have a concern that you want to bring up for Bravo or whatever, bring it up with one of the candidates, and we'll make sure that it gets voiced.
All right, sounds good. Any shout outs?
Shout out to the listeners, shout out to the candidates, and just the community in general. I mean,
fair enough. All right, Bam.
Right. Well, yeah. Normally I blame Book for not having any taking all my ideas for conclusions. For the stuff I tend to do. Right. Well, my conclusions is obviously the stuff that went on this afternoon and tonight, actually, with regards to CCP Sabwing and CCP E-Turn. My heartmost felt sympathies and respects for these gentlemen. I really do wish and hope them the best in life and their future endeavors. They were our princes in Dust, and I do worry about them. With regards to everything else, tank balancing, meta locking, and removing tanks from ambush, yeah, well, those are just ideas. Don't take them as a given. They're just ideas. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, brother. Any shout outs to anybody other than the CCP guys? Which, by the way, is a pretty good one.
No, I'm still a bit tough, man. So I can't really think straight,
Okay.
if you know what I mean.
No, absolutely no drama with that. Zell?
Yeah, I'm going to give a shout out to Godin and Hinox, who've been listening in and have contributed to a continuing discussion going on in Skype, and they were in the in-game channel, Biomassed. As a reminder, people who are listening to the stream can join the in-game channel, Biomassed, and we do read that during the show. I'm going to give a shout out to my Alliance top men. Shout out to the Podside guys for letting us crash their mumble continually, and Derry for helping us get this streaming live.
Sounds good.
Also vote for me.
I've got to.
Yeah, that's a good point. That dude, Derry, god damn, he helped me out. Mumble is like, wow. Use TeamSpeak, damn it, not this Mumble stuff. God.
Darius been trying to get us to migrate to TeamSpeak for a while.
Mumble is the chosen voice server of the Space King, and everyone shall use it.
I've shot the Space King twice. He's definitely dead. Go to TeamSpeak.
Okay. So for me, guys, shout outs. Clearly, I want to give a shout out to CCP Saberwing, CCP Etern. The community is better for having you guys have worked with us. Like, totally legit on that one. I would like to give a quick shout out to BAMM and Hans. And I mean this very specifically. Like, we wanted these two guys on tonight, not because of any, back and forth on the forums that occurred in the last 24 hours, but because they're legitimately two guys that believe this much in the community and the game, that they're that passionate about it. So I appreciate you guys coming on. Really solid. And I do want to just kind of point out to everybody that's kind of in big forum warriors and stuff like that, is it's a different thing when you have two guys that are passionate and they're articulate and they're smart and they're trying to actually sort through a situation or sort through a problem. They come at it from different perspectives. And I'd come just to offer that to you because occasionally, like we all know it, the forum community gets a little toxic, but these are two stand-up guys, and I really appreciate having them on. So shout outs to you two guys. Shout outs to Saberwing and Etern. And beyond that, my kind of closing thoughts is, I guess that really was my closing thoughts. That's what I'd like to just sum it up with. And absolutely, BAMM, we would really love to have you back on because I really want to know how you got started in video cat, YouTube and for Dust. Like, what made you want to start doing that? I've actually been wanting to ask you that for a while. So we're gonna have to have you on at some point later in another week or two, and just kind of, maybe a little bit more positive vibes when things have cooled down a little bit with the CCP scene. Other than that, thanks a lot to Derek and the team. And guys, I think we're gonna call it a night. So without further ado, we'll see you next week. 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 See you next week.